The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of an ignored phone call. Not just any phone call, my regular Sunday morning check-in with my parents. For 5 years straight, I'd never missed it. Even when I was in Tokyo for a business conference, I'd stayed up until 3 a.m. just to maintain our routine. My name is Sarah Chen, and at 35, I'm what most people would consider successful. Senior VP at a global tech firm, a penthouse apartment in Seattle, and enough disposable income to support both myself and my aging parents comfortably. At least that's what I thought I was doing, supporting them. I stared at my phone that Sunday morning, watching it ring through to voicemail for the third time. Mom always picked up by the second ring. Always. Even when she was in the garden or cooking, she'd have her phone close by, waiting for my call. It was our thing. They're probably just sleeping in, I told myself, trying to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. But my parents hadn't slept past 7 a.m. in decades. Dad's morning routine was as predictable as the sunrise. Wake at 6, coffee by 6:15, newspaper by 6:30. Mom would join him by 6:45, making their signature breakfast of congee and pickled vegetables. I knew their schedule because I funded it. Every month for the past 5 years, I transferred $5,000 into their joint account. For a comfortable retirement, I told them when I first set it up. They protested, of course. Chinese parents always do. But I'd insisted. After all, they'd sacrificed everything to bring me to America when I was 10, working multiple jobs just to give me a chance at a better education. The memory of those early years still haunts me. Mom's hands, cracked and red from washing dishes at 3 different restaurants. Dad's perpetual exhaustion from driving his taxi 18 hours a day. They'd lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment, sleeping on a fold-out couch so I could have the bedroom to study. Their sacrifice had paid off. I graduated top of my class from Stanford, landed a dream job in tech, and climbed the corporate ladder with a determination inherited from them. The monthly transfers were my way of saying thank you, of giving them the retirement they deserved. I tried calling again at noon. Still no answer. By 2 p.m., the knot in my stomach had turned into full-blown anxiety. I was about to drive to their house when my phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Liu, their next-door neighbor of 15 years. Sarah, is everything okay? There's a moving truck at your parents' house. I nearly dropped my phone. Moving truck? What moving truck? Are you sure? I texted back, my fingers trembling. Yes, big truck. 2 men loading boxes. Your parents left very early this morning in a taxi. Lots of suitcases. I was in my car before I finished reading her response, breaking every speed limit between my penthouse and their suburban home. The 20-minute drive took 12. I kept trying their phones, straight to voicemail now. When I pulled into their driveway, the moving truck was gone. The house looked normal from the outside. Her garden Mom had tended so lovingly, still perfect in its precision. But something felt off. The curtains were drawn. Mom never closed them during the day. She loved natural light. My key still worked in the lock. The door swung open to reveal emptiness. The furniture was still there. Their old couch, the dining table where we'd shared Sunday dinners, Dad's favorite recliner. But all the personal touches were gone. The walls were bare. Mom's beloved collection of family photos vanished. The shelves that had held their books, trinkets, and memories were empty. Mom? I called out, my voice echoing in the strange stillness. Dad? No answer. Of course not. I moved through the house in a daze, noting what was missing. All their clothes, Mom's jewelry box, Dad's prized calligraphy set. Their passports. I checked the drawer where they always kept them. Gone. In the kitchen, a single piece of paper lay on the counter, held down by Mom's favorite jade pendant, the one she'd worn every day since Grandma gave it to her. My hands shook as I picked up the note, recognizing Dad's precise handwriting. Dear Sarah, by the time you read this, we will be far away. Please don't try to find us. We've thought about this for a long time, and this is what's best. You've done enough for us, too much perhaps. It's time for us to live our own life, away from obligations and expectations. We've left the house and furniture for you to sell or keep. It's all paid for. Don't worry about us. We have what we need. Take care of yourself. Mom and Dad. I read the note 3 times, trying to make sense of the words. They'd planned this. Well, I'd been sending them money, checking in every Sunday, sharing meals and holidays, and making plans for their future. They'd been planning to disappear. The jade pendant felt heavy in my hand. Mom had once told me it would be mine someday, a piece of our heritage to pass down. Now it felt like a goodbye gift I never wanted. I sank into one of the kitchen chairs, my mind racing. What had I missed? There must have been signs. Had they seemed different lately? More distant? Less engaged? Last Sunday's dinner flashed through my mind. We'd eaten at their house, as usual. Mom had made my favorite dishes: red braised pork, garlic green beans, soup with the handmade noodles that took her hours to prepare. Dad had shown me his latest calligraphy project, promising to teach me the traditional style he'd learned from his father. Everything had seemed normal. Perfect, even. But now thinking back, there had been moments. Mom hugging me a little longer than usual when I left. Dad watching me with an odd expression when he thought I wasn't looking. The way they'd insisted on taking a family photo, something we rarely did during regular Sunday dinners. My phone buzzed again. Mrs. Liu. Sarah, are you okay? I saw your car. I couldn't answer. Instead, I opened my banking app, checking the joint account I'd set up for them. Empty. They'd withdrawn everything 3 days ago. 5 years of monthly deposits meant to secure their retirement had funded their escape instead. The house felt suffocating suddenly. I needed air. Stumbling out to the backyard, I found more evidence of their planned departure. The garden Mom's pride and joy had been meticulously cleaned out. No plants in pots, nothing that needed care. Even Dad's herb garden was gone, leaving bare soil behind. Back inside, I started opening drawers, closets, anything that might give me a clue about where they'd gone. Their bedroom closet was empty except for a few old clothes. The drawers held nothing but dust. In Dad's office, the filing cabinet still contained some papers, old utility bills, house documents, car maintenance records. Nothing helpful. The computer was gone, along with all their important documents. I checked their bathroom, no toothbrushes, no medicine, nothing personal. They'd been thorough. My phone started ringing. Work calls, probably wondering why I hadn't shown up for my afternoon meetings. I silenced it. How could I explain this? My parents, whom I'd supported and trusted and loved, had effectively ghosted me. Not just moved away or changed their plans. They'd vanished without a trace, leaving nothing but a cold note and an empty house behind. I found myself back in the kitchen, staring at their note again. It's time for us to live our own life, away from obligations and expectations. What obligations? What expectations? I'd given them money freely, happily. I'd never asked for anything in return except their presence in my life. The sun was setting when I finally left their house, jade pendant in my pocket, note crumpled in my hand. As I locked up, Mrs. Liu came over, concern written all over her face. Sarah, what's happening? Are your parents okay? I managed a weak smile. They'd decided to travel for a while. I lied, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. They've been planning it for some time. She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes. But she just patted my arm and said, "If you need anything." Back in my car, I sat there long after dark, trying to process what had happened. My parents, who had sacrificed everything to give me a better life, had now sacrificed our relationship for what? Freedom from obligations they'd never had to begin with. I pulled out my phone one last time, sending a text to both their numbers. I love you. If you ever want to come home, I'll be here. The messages showed as undelivered. They'd already disconnected their phones. Looking back at their dark house, I realized this wasn't just about the money. The monthly deposits, the support, the regular calls and visits, they hadn't seen it as the gift of gratitude I'd meant it to be. Somehow, my attempt to give them a comfortable retirement had turned into something else in their minds, something they needed to escape from. As I drove home that night, their jade pendant heavy in my pocket, I wondered if I'd ever understand why they did it, why they chose to break my heart rather than just talk to me, why they turned 5 years of love and support into an obligation they needed to flee from. The worst part, tomorrow would be Sunday again, and for the first time in 5 years, there would be no one to call. The week after my parents disappeared, I threw myself into searching for them with the same intensity I usually reserve for closing million-dollar deals. I hired a private investigator, filed a missing persons report, though the police were unhelpful once they saw the note, and spent countless hours tracking down every possible lead. My first discovery came from their bank records. 2 months before they left, they'd opened a new account at a different bank. I found transfers, small at first, then larger, moving money from the account I'd set up to this new one. They'd been planning this methodically, building their escape fund right under my nose. Ms. Chen, Detective Rivera said during our third meeting, I understand you're worried, but your parents are adults who made a choice. The note clearly indicates this was planned. There's no evidence of foul play. I wanted to scream. Instead, I pulled out my laptop and showed him the spreadsheet I'd created. Look at these patterns, I insisted. They bought plane tickets, but I can't trace where to. They hired a moving company that won't reveal their destination due to client privacy. They've erased their entire digital footprint. Normal retirees don't do this. The detective just shook his head. Some people want a clean break. It's their right. But I couldn't accept that. Not from the parents who taught me that family was everything. Not from the mother who called me her precious pearl, or the father who still cut up fruit for me during my visits, just like he did when I was a child. At work, I was barely functioning. Sandra, my assistant, had rearranged my schedule to handle the bare minimum of meetings, but even those were a struggle. Sarah? She called softly from my office doorway one afternoon, finding me staring at my parents' note for the 100th time. The Tokyo team is waiting for your video call. I straightened my blazer and put on my professional mask. Of course. Give me 2 minutes. But during the call, while discussing quarterly projections, my mind kept wandering to the last time I'd spoken to my parents. Had there been anything in their voices, any hint of what was coming? That evening, I drove back to their house. I'd been doing this every day, hoping. What? That I'd find them there, laughing, saying it was all a misunderstanding. The house was as empty as ever, but this time I noticed something new. On the kitchen counter, next to where they'd left the note, there was a faint impression in the dust. A rectangle about the size of a small book. I opened every drawer until I found it, Mom's old recipe book, tucked away in a corner. She kept all her special recipes here, the ones passed down through generations. The book fell open to a well-worn page. My favorite red braised pork recipe, a photo slipped out. It was recent, taken at last month's Sunday dinner. We were all smiling at the camera, Mom's arm around my waist, Dad's hand on my shoulder. On the back, in Mom's delicate handwriting, our precious Sarah, who gave us everything. Everything except the freedom they apparently wanted. My phone buzzed. A text from Jack, a guy I've been casually dating for the past few months. Haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay? I hadn't told him about my parents. Hadn't told anyone except my boss and the authorities. How could I explain that the people I trusted most in the world had abandoned me? Just busy with work, I texted back. Another lie to add to the growing pile. That night, I slept in my old bedroom at their house, surrounded by the furniture they'd left behind. In the morning, I opened their medicine cabinet, noting what they'd taken and what they'd left. All of Dad's heart medication was gone, at least they planned for that. But Mom's favorite face cream was still there, half used. It seemed such a small thing to leave behind. This luxury I'd bought her last Christmas. The private investigator called while I was making coffee. Ms. Chen, I've found something. Your parents booked a car service to the airport 2 weeks before they left. The driver remembers them discussing their plans. My heart raced. What did they say? They were talking about Malaysia, specifically Penang. The driver remembered because they were excited about the food markets there. Malaysia, my mother's childhood home, a place she hadn't visited in decades. It made a painful kind of sense. I immediately started researching flights to Penang, but then stopped myself. They'd made it clear they didn't want to be found. Would chasing them across the world just push them further away? At work that day, I couldn't focus. During a meeting about a new product launch, our CFO asked me a direct question twice before I even heard him. I'm sorry, I said, gathering my papers. I need to step out for a moment. I ended up in the bathroom, gripping the sink, staring at my reflection. The woman looking back at me seemed older somehow, the past week having etched new lines around her eyes. My phone buzzed again. Mrs. Liu. Sarah, dear. I found something you should see. Can you come by? 20 minutes later, I was sitting in her living room, holding a stack of photos she'd taken over the years. My parents in their garden, at neighborhood barbecues, celebrating Lunar New Year. Look at this one, she said, pointing to a recent photo from last month. It showed my parents sitting on their porch. They were looking at something on Dad's tablet, their heads close together, smiling secretively. They were different these past few months, Mrs. Liu said gently, more animated. Your mother started giving away her plants, telling me she was simplifying. Your father spent hours on that tablet, which wasn't like him at all. Why didn't you tell me? She patted my hand. Would you have believed something was wrong? They seemed happy, Sarah, not trapped or troubled. Just ready for something new. Her words hit me hard. Happy, not trapped. Had I been so focused on supporting them financially that I'd missed their desire for something else? Had my weekly check-ins and Sunday dinners become a gilded cage? That evening, I finally opened my work laptop and drafted an email I should have sent days ago. Dear Sandra, please cancel all my meetings for the next 2 weeks and arrange for Thomas to cover my ongoing projects. I need to take some personal time. Best, Sarah. Then I booked a flight to Penang. Not to find them. I wasn't ready to break my promise about not looking for them. But I needed to understand. To see the place that had drawn my mother back after all these years. As I packed my suitcase, I came across the jade pendant they'd left behind. In Chinese culture, jade symbolizes wisdom, balance, and peace. I'd always assumed they'd left it for me as a parting gift, but now I wondered if it was something else. A reminder that some things are meant to be passed down, while others need to be left behind. My phone buzzed with a response from Sandra. Take all the time you need. We got things covered here. I sat on my bed, holding the pendant, thinking about balance. For 5 years, I tried to repay my parents' sacrifices with financial support. Every month, that $5,000 transfer was my way of saying thank you, of trying to give them the comfortable life they'd given up for me. But maybe that hadn't been what they wanted. Maybe after decades of putting my needs first, moving countries, working endless hours, living small so I could live large, they needed to put themselves first for once. The thought hurt, but it also carried a grain of truth I couldn't ignore. My parents had spent their entire lives being responsible, to their parents, to me, to their own sense of duty. Was it so wrong that they wanted to write a new chapter for themselves, even if their method of doing so had shattered my heart? I picked up my phone and opened my chat with Jack. He'd been patient with my distance this past week, but he deserved an explanation. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? There's something I need to tell you. His response was immediate. Of course. Is everything okay? No, I typed back, finally being honest. But I'm working on it. That night, I dreamed of my mother's garden. In the dream, all her plants had grown wild, breaking free of their carefully tended beds. But instead of being chaotic, they were beautiful in their freedom, reaching for the sun in their own way. Maybe that's what my parents were doing, growing in an unexpected direction, breaking free of the neat beds I tried to plant them in. It didn't make the hurt go away. It didn't excuse their method of leaving. But as I lay awake in the early hours, their jade pendant cool against my palm, I began to understand that sometimes love means letting go, even when every instinct screams to hold on tighter. Tomorrow, I would fly to Penang. Not to find them, but to find understanding. And maybe in the process, to find a new way of loving them. One that allowed for freedom alongside gratitude, independence alongside connection. Before I fell back asleep, I sent one last text to their disconnected numbers. I think I understand now. I love you. Be happy. The messages stayed undelivered, but somehow, I felt they'd hear it anyway. Penang was exactly as my mother had described it. A sensory explosion of food stalls, colonial architecture, and vibrant street art. The humid air clung to my skin as I checked into my hotel in Georgetown, the historic heart of the island. I'd chosen this particular hotel because Mom had once mentioned her childhood home was nearby. Standing on my balcony that first evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, I wondered if they were somewhere on this same island, watching the same sunset. Your parents are very wise, my taxi driver had said on the ride from the airport, after I'd mentioned I was exploring my mother's hometown. Many overseas Chinese return here for retirement. Everything you need, good food, good doctors, but much cheaper than America. His words echoed in my head as I walked the streets that evening. Every corner seemed to hold another food stall, the aromas of laksa, char kway teow, and satay mixing in the air. I stopped at a busy hawker center, ordering dishes my mother used to make at home. The flavors were familiar yet different, more intense, more authentic. An elderly woman at the next table noticed me struggling with my chopsticks, I was too used to the Chinese American style of holding them. Ah, ABC? She asked, using the term for American-born Chinese. When I explained I'd come to understand my mother's homeland, her face softened. Your mother did what many of us did, she said, switching between English and Mandarin. Left for better opportunities, but home always calls us back. The heart knows where it belongs. I spent the next day exploring the streets my mother must have walked as a child. The historic shophouses, the temples with their burning incense, the old markets where vendors still called out their wares in a mix of languages. Everything felt both foreign and strangely familiar, like a half-remembered dream. In a small cafe, I pulled out my laptop to check my work emails. A notification popped up from my bank. The automatic monthly transfer of $5,000 to my parents' account had failed. Of course it had. They closed the account. My finger hovered over the button to cancel the recurring payment, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Canceling it felt too final, like accepting they were really gone. Instead, I opened a new savings account and redirected the transfer there. Maybe someday they'd need it. Maybe someday they'd come back. That afternoon, I found myself in a small temple. The same one where my mother had once told me she used to pray for good grades. The air was thick with incense, and the quiet was broken only by the occasional ring of a bell. I sat on a worn wooden bench, holding the jade pendant they'd left behind. An elderly monk approached, his orange robes bright in the dim light. You carry much worry, he said in English, gesturing to my clenched hands. I found myself telling him everything about my parents' sacrifice, my success, the money I'd given them, their disappearance. He listened without interruption, nodding occasionally. You tried to repay their sacrifice with money, he said finally, but what they sacrificed was not money. It was their dreams, their homeland, their own path. Perhaps now they are reclaiming those things. By abandoning me? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. He smiled gently. Sometimes we must let go of one shore to reach another. They let go of their shore to give you your life. Now perhaps they need to find their own shore again. I left the temple with his words echoing in my mind. That evening, I found myself in a night market, surrounded by the kind of street food my mother always said she missed. An old woman was making hand-pulled noodles, her movements quick and practiced, just like Mom used to make. My phone buzzed. A text from Jack. How are you doing? Found what you're looking for? I started to type my usual "I'm fine" response, then stopped. Instead, I sent. I'm learning that sometimes love means understanding why people leave, even when it hurts. His response came quickly. That's a hard lesson. Want to talk about it when you get back. For the first time since my parents left, I felt a spark of something like hope. Not for finding them. I was beginning to accept that they didn't want to be found, but for finding a way forward for myself. That night, I dreamed of my parents. They were younger, the age they must have been when they first came to America. In the dream, they were standing on a dock, waving goodbye to everything they knew, everything they loved, just to give me a chance at a better life. I woke up crying, but the tears felt different this time. Not bitter, not angry, just understanding. On my last day in Penang, I visited one final place, a small park where my mother once told me she used to play as a child. Sitting on a bench, watching elderly couples practice Tai Chi in the morning light, I took out my phone and opened the Notes app. Dear Mom and Dad, I wrote, knowing they'd never see it but needing to say it anyway. I think I understand now. You gave up your dreams for me. You left your home, your family, everything you knew just to give me opportunities. You lived in a tiny apartment, worked jobs beneath your education, learned a new language, all for me. The money I sent. It was my way of trying to repay that sacrifice. But maybe what you really needed wasn't money. Maybe what you needed was to reclaim the dreams you put aside for me. I'm still hurt that you left without saying goodbye. I still wish you'd talk to me about it. But I understand now, sitting in the city where Mom grew up, that sometimes we need to find our own way home. I love you. I hope you're happy. And if you ever want to come back, I'll be there. Not to take care of you, not to give you money, but just to be your daughter. I saved the note, then pulled out the jade pendant. After a moment's consideration, I put it on, feeling its cool weight against my skin. Some things are meant to be kept close, even when the people who gave them to us are far away. As I walked back to my hotel to pack for my flight home, I passed a street photographer taking pictures of tourists. On impulse, I asked him to take my photo. In it, I'm standing in front of a colorful mural, wearing Mom's jade pendant, smiling despite the tears in my eyes. I had come to Penang looking for my parents, but instead, I found something else: understanding. Of them, of their choices, and maybe a little bit of myself too. 3 months after my return from Penang, I finally started clearing out my parents' house. Not to sell it, I wasn't ready for that yet, but to make peace with their absence. Jack helped me, spending his weekends sorting through decades of memories. We'd grown closer since my return. My honesty about my parents' disappearance had somehow broken down walls I hadn't even realized I'd built. "What do you want to do with these?" he asked, holding up a box of old photo albums. I took them from him, running my fingers over the worn covers. "Keep them," I said. "They're part of the story, even if the ending changed." The house felt different now. Not empty exactly, but peaceful. I'd moved some of my own things in, transformed Dad's old office into a workspace for my remote days. Mom's garden was blooming again. I'd replanted it with different flowers, creating something new while honoring what had been. One Sunday morning, as I was sorting through their kitchen, my phone rang. Unknown international number. My heart stopped. "Hello," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Ms. Chen?" A heavily accented voice. "Not my parents. This is Dr. Wang from Penang General Hospital." My knees went weak. "Yes. Your father listed you as his emergency contact. He's had a minor heart episode, nothing serious, but—" "Is he okay?" I interrupted, already opening my laptop to look for flights. Yes, stable now. He asked me not to call, but as a doctor, I felt you should know. Your mother is with him." I took a deep breath. "Can you tell them? Tell them I love them. And if they need anything, I will pass along your message," he said kindly. After hanging up, I sat in Dad's old recliner, processing. They were okay, together. And somehow, knowing that was enough. At work the next day, I asked for a meeting with my boss. "I'd like to open a branch office in Singapore." I proposed, spreading out my research. "We've been talking about expanding into Southeast Asia. Singapore's perfect, and it's just an hour's flight from Penang." She studied me carefully. "This isn't just about business, is it?" "No," I admitted. "But sometimes personal motivation makes for better business decisions." 2 weeks later, my proposal was approved. I didn't tell my parents. They'd left for a reason, and I respected that now. But somehow, being closer felt right. Not to chase them, not to bring them back, but to find a new way of being family, even from a distance. The night before I left for Singapore, Jack helped me pack up my apartment. We decided to try long distance, another new way of loving while allowing for independence. "Found this behind the bookshelf," he said, holding up an envelope. Inside was the note my parents had left, still creased from how tightly I crushed it that first day. The words didn't hurt anymore. "Keep it," I told him. "It's part of what brought us here." My last stop before leaving was their house. I decided to keep it, hiring a service to maintain it. Not as a museum to what was lost, but as a bridge between what had been and what might be. Standing in the kitchen where I'd found their goodbye note, I touched Mom's jade pendant. I wore it every day now. Then I took out my phone and sent one final text to their old numbers. "I'm moving to Singapore for work. Not to find you, but to find my own way, just like you did. I understand now. The door is always open, whenever you're ready. Love always, your daughter." The messages stayed undelivered, but that was okay. Some messages aren't meant to be received. They're meant to be released. As I locked up the house, Mrs. Liu came over to say goodbye. "You look different," she said, studying my face. "More at peace." I hugged her, thanking her for being there during the hardest days. I am at peace, I realized. They found their way home. Now it's my turn to find mine. That evening, as my flight took off towards Singapore, I thought about journeys, the one my parents took to America all those years ago, the one they took back to Malaysia, and now mine. Different paths, different choices, but all driven by the same thing: the courage to seek what our hearts needed most. Sometimes love means letting go. Sometimes it means finding a new way to hold on. And sometimes it means doing both at the same time, trusting that the heart knows where it belongs.